Well, welcome back. This is our third video presented by Seed and Light International. And we're going to be talking about how you're going to use what you grow. And there's several options on a 90-day garden, how you approach it. The first thing is, if you've watched our videos on growing greens in the wintertime, you'll see that we grow right up into the spring in the greenhouse or on the porch or any place where you can. To provide some greens fresh for salads and have trays of greens. But one of the advantages is you can also transplant out of there a little bit into the garden to kind of get a jump on some things. This year we're going to be growing more of the, instead of toi choy and bok choy, I'm going to be trying the third member of that family, which is tatsoi, which is smaller and milder, tastes more like spinach, but will grow into the heat a little bit more. And Phil, I think we'll get a little bit great greens off of to dry off of that. Right. And spinach takes a little long in Albuquerque, and we heat up a little bit fast. Right now it's December, and that's why my onions look so bad. Give a couple of months growth on these, and they'll be nice big scallions. So let's talk a little bit about how we're going to use all this and why we want to have some corn to add to our beans, and why we would dry all of the greens and the squash and the tomatoes. Why are we doing that? Why? I mean, first of all, you save a lot of space because when you dry something, it shrinks it down. Why else?
I hate to can. It's a lot of work. It's hot in the summer, and you're steaming up your whole thing, your whole kitchen, and so I turn to drying as a more, in my opinion, economical and less aggravating, and jars and hot water and that kind of stuff. So I've really enjoyed approaching it through drying.
Okay, now what kind of equipment do you have to dry?
So the first year that I ever dried anything, I had no equipment. I had a sunny spot in the backyard and a clean bed linen that I placed my vegetables on and allowed the sun to handle that.
All right.
There is some limitations with that. You have greater chances of insect predation, etc., etc. So I turned to one of the workhorses of the world here, of my kitchen, and it's just a simple fan driven with a slight heating, with a small heating element.
Yeah, now that's the important part. What I want to do now is to take off the top part. Let me have the heating part, and you can show them the dry discs. I mean, a lot of you've seen these. There's several kinds out on the market. Usually you get a little temperature here so you can dry a little slower. It's nicer to dry a little slower with less heat. We're not trying to dry meat in here. It has a fan on the inside, and you can get up to 12 or so trays that you fill up, put on here, cut up your pieces in smaller pieces and lay them out there. Now for green leaves, I don't cut them up. I just lay the green leaves in here and they just shrivel up real small and I crush them up. The top then, after you've got several trays full, you put your top on, plug it in and walk away, and it's going to do the drying for you, okay? Now, if you don't have electricity, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do. But you can hang. You literally can separate these on a rope and just literally put hang them one right after the other and put some gauze over it so you get some airflow on it and dry that way. Some people dry in an oven. It's a little harder to dry in an oven because your oven wants to be a little bit warmer than I want it to dry. 115, 100 degrees is a pretty good temperature to dry at, and 125 depending on what you're drying. Tomatoes are dry a little bit hotter. Greens you want to dry a little bit less than that. Now, when we get through, we're going to use this stuff. We've got a dried squash of several different kinds. You can see we've cut the pumpkin open. Now this is after a whole year on the front porch in the sun, and it's just as nice as it can be. So I can store this way, and don't dry, don't do anything. I just cut it open when I need it, and I could have stored it much better in its cooler, dark position. It probably would last longer. I can grow ramp onions or multiplier onions or potato onions in the garden, and always have onions to go out and get. I can grow garlic. I can use the garlic at any stage. They don't have to be full-size bulbs for you to be able to go get it. I've got good quality zucchinis that are yellow, have a little bit more vitamin A in them. That's why I keep going back to the yellow. I like purple vegetables and yellow vegetables for that reason. We know that we want to have different kind of spices dried, and so that means that you can dry easily. You can dry all the oregano you want if you get a plant or two. You can plant and grow several different kinds of basil, rosemary, mint. In fact, adding mint to some soups and things is kind of a surprise, but it works, doesn't it?
It does.
Cilantro, spinach, collards, chard. All of those are easy to grow. They're all going to grow within our parameter of 90 days or less. We could probably even talk a little bit about a 60-day garden, you know, that would be really early in the spring that you cover and things like that. But now, how are we going to use this to taste good and that kind of thing, Phil? And this is where a lot of your dried stuff really comes in handy.
Right. So I'm going to pick on one that everybody laughs at me when they see how many cherry tomatoes I grow. Cherry tomatoes are very easy. They're very hardy. They take a lot of abuse. I've not had as much success as other people have had growing larger tomatoes, and so I've kind of leaned towards just growing cherry tomatoes. And so one of the things that I do is I dry my cherry tomatoes. Very easy to pick, quick slice, you open it up and place it on the drying trays and you dry it.
What temperature you dry it?
As low as I can. I try to really dry at the lower temperatures. I think that it damages...
It preserves as much of the value.
Exactly. Now, as for storing it, I put it in a coffee can, an old coffee can. I keep it on my...
You dry those real dry though. I mean, I like to get my dried food really dry. Then I know it's not going to grow any bugs or anything on it.
I was talking to a friend of mine, an older gentleman, and he suggested the following. He said, go ahead and dry it till you think it's dry. Then pull it out, put it in a plastic bag, put it in your freezer, and then pull it out again and then dry it again. And at that point, you will have removed about as much moisture as you can.
Possibly can.
Using normal stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I do, especially with very high moisture things like the tomatoes. Now, I give these away...
Everybody laughs at you till they eat one.
Until they eat one.
Then it's a different story, because they're sweet, they're blast of tomato flavor, unbelievable blast of good tomato flavor, just like you want to have in a nice big slicer, but you get 2 of those off the bush here, and you're happy. But these you get tons of, and you've got it available to you. And you're going to use that in stews and soups. You're going to, you know, I was talking about one of the things we haven't done very much of, but we're going to do a lot more bread baking and to make veggie breads where you actually add a vegetable component to the bread. I think those tomatoes are going to be fantastic there. I've had those. But now tell us a little bit about this little mixture of all kinds of greens that you have there.
Right. So. I grow collards. I love collards. Fresh collards are probably one of my favorite greens in the world. Go ahead.
First thing about collards is, don't think about collards that you buy in the store as tasting like the collards you grow in your garden. There is no comparison, period. That goes for collards, kales, and chard. If that's all you can get, they're better than a kick in the teeth. But I'll tell you, growing your own greens in the yard, and you bring them in, you bring that collard in, you say, well, collards never tasted this good. They don't have that bitter, nasty aftertaste and all that kind of... I'm sorry, go ahead.
True, they weren't my mom's collards, I'll tell you that, when I first started growing and eating those. So one of the things that I looked at, again, in preserving greens for use, is I started drying them as a full leaf and reusing them in soups and stews and reconstituting them. And then one day I made a bowl of rice. I wanted some rice for dinner, and I thought I'd throw some butter on there, and I thought, I've got some dried greens. And so I went ahead and grabbed a couple of leaves of dried greens and just ground them up in my hand and tossed it on. I was very impressed with the flavors. A good flavor combination, a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I thought, well, why don't I just go ahead and grind them, the leaves up with really whatever I had available. And so I had some dried parsley, I had some...
makes a nice mix when you can kind of mix them up that way.
Exactly. I put some parsley in, collards. There was some kale. I don't believe I had any chard this time. I just ground it up in my coffee grinder, and then I keep this sitting by the stove. And if I'm making anything from scrambled eggs to a soup to my rice or a little bit of pasta, I just sprinkle it right on, and just adds a depth of flavor. I do the same thing with the cherry tomatoes.
They would never be cooked in this household. They'll be eaten just like that. I'm telling you right now.
I'll grab a handful of the dried cherry tomatoes, I'll throw them in the coffee grinder, grind them up, and then add them to a chili or a minestrone type soup or whatever. So that's this is what I was trying to do with this, is have a quick, ready, easy, just vitamin and nutrient packed, dense food source available to me to use as a condiment, as a dry condiment.
Yeah.
Okay. And actually, I added a little bit of salt to this, and just to give it a little bit of flavor.
Now, when I dried these, again, these were the whole leaves. This is spinach, and I just dried the whole leaves, and I can just throw those in a soup, and in no time they're rehydrated, and they look kind of like a spinach leaf. Okay. And then I found out by kind of crushing them up, it made it a little bit easier to put in stews, because some people don't like to eat a lot of greens, and so I can hide them by having crushed, and I haven't gone so far as to mill mine yet, but I'm sure going to do that. This is a mixture of red and green chili that are reasonably hot, but for those that would like the bell peppers dry beautifully, you have to hide the red ones from everybody, because again, they're like those tomatoes. Everybody will want to eat them just dry, because they're just like dried apples. They just go. So you got to hide them until you get them fixed, ready to put away, and then you've got a nice little jar of them to add to your soups and this kind of thing. And in the wintertime, when peppers get so high, it's kind of nice to have that. So what we have here now is just a beginning. Where do you get all this from? Okay, I do want to mention one place that is a non-profit, so I can mention them openly, and that is Native Seed Search at nativeseeds.org. We'll have a lot of the beans, we'll have a lot of the corns, have different corns that we grow, we'll have a lot of the pumpkins. Just look for the early ones, the ones that go in the mountains that are high. I happen to go by a Chinese restaurant, a Chinese store, and a lot of times you can find some just interesting seeds, greens that you can add in to what you've got going. So that kind of gets us into the beginning of the 90-day garden. We're going to be doing more videos as the spring comes on. We'll probably do some this winter too, maybe a cooking one. And then go ahead and work towards, what do you do? Food prices are going to go up. How do you keep good nutrition in your diet? What can you do? What can you grow in your own backyard and in 90 days, so you know that you're going to have the season to do it? If you get 120, you'll just get many more vegetables. That's all. No problem in that, is there?
No.
No, I didn't think so. You're going to want to try these. These are outstanding. Thank you.